Hey, what is going on, Virgos? Butch here. Virgos and Virgo lovers, I guess. Um, Virgo and their people. I started this little thing where I started doing the truth about each sign. Well, this is the truth about Virgo. Um, my hope is that it gives people a little more insight into Virgos. You know, a little more understanding, a little more context, because sometimes people, friends, family, romantic relationships, sometimes people we don't know each other and really know how to, understand each other. And I hope this helps people understand Virgos better. Um, and it just comes, it's not going to be set in stone because it is my experiences with Virgos plus the research I've done. I'm coming into like my 6th year on YouTube, doing tarot readings, and I've learned a lot. But I also, have a lot of experience. My dad, he's a Virgo. I have lots of family and friends that are Virgos, so this is just kind of I feel like a lot of issues that we have with friendships, family, and relationships is people just maybe don't get us right. So I'm hoping this helps. It's been going good so far. I've done a few signs already, but you'll see me looking down a lot. I have it all on place cards. I don't know why that one says Maria on the back of it, but it just keeps me organized. And I feel like it leads perfectly into the first one. But if I don't do that, I'd be all over excuse me. I'd be all over the place. And nobody wants to listen to that. Anyway, like I said, it plays in the first one, planning. Virgos are very organized. They like to be organized. They like to plan. They're very meticulous. They like things going to plan. And the best way for things to go to plan is to have a really, detailed plan, have it set out. It reminds me of when I was a kid and I used to go on trips with my dad. My dad always planned everything. He would plan things that nobody else would even think about. So that is one of the things. It's their organized nature. They like to be organized. They like things neat. But it's, I always felt like it was fun for my dad to plan. I feel like that was part of the fun. But number 2, perfectionist. Virgos don't like things being out of order. It's, they're really about they want things to be perfect. And like I said, perfectionist is what the word I use, but it's not like they have to have it perfect, but they want to. So it's very different. And that's the thing. They want things like they notice things that other people don't notice. And like a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, he's a Virgo, and like he would come into my house, my first apartment when I was young. Me and my best friend used to live together, and he used to come over all the time because he just lived down the street, but we all grew up together. And he would come into my house, and I could just have it cleaned. It could just be what I feel like is spotless, and he'll still find something. And another thing is too is the order doesn't necessarily have to be what everybody else thinks is order, if that makes sense. It's what's order to them. And this leads into the next one. Like I said, they notice everything. Virgos notice everything. And that's what kind of leads into the being perfectionist. And there's no, even the smallest flaw, they'll notice it. And when I say they notice everything, it isn't just in cleaning or having things perfect. It's also I kind of, a lot of times I notice that Virgos are more like a wallflower. Like they're watchers. They'll watch and they'll learn things through watching. Sometimes you'll meet a person and they're talking all the time, or they're always asking questions. They're always talking. I feel like the wallflowers learn more because they're really not, they're soaking it all in. They're reading the room. They're seeing what's going on and they're soaking it up. And you can go in the room and talk your face off, and you may not learn anything about it because you're too busy talking. So, like I said, I mean, I feel like in that case as well, they notice everything is that you're not going to slip too many things past a Virgo as well. So, I mean, there's so many angles to that. The next thing, neat freaks. People call them neat freaks. Virgos don't just clean, they deep clean. My stepmother, she was a Virgo as well, and she used to tell me that cleaning was her therapy. Whenever she was thinking about something, whenever she was worried about something, she would clean. And I'm like, there's people that go out there and they mop their floors and they wipe their counters. I'm talking about like door wells, wiping the top of door wells. I'm talking about wiping the top of fans. I remember her, when she would clean, she would move everything out of the living room into the kitchen and clean the living room. I remember her hands and knees cleaning everything. And then until that room was clean, she couldn't move on. But like I said, for her, cleaning was her therapy, she would say. Now, my dad being a Virgo, he wasn't necessarily the neat freak as in he would do the cleaning. So there is differences. But he liked things in order and he liked things clean. Dirt would bug him, but he didn't necessarily do the cleaning. So there's that. The next one, high standards. Virgos have high standards for themselves and for others. But like that, in that way, they hold themselves to the high standards as well. Which you can't really complain about. If someone were to hold you to high standards and then not live up to that themselves, then we have room for complaints. But with Virgos, it's not like that. Like they live by their own rule, and I mean, a lot of times their standards are too high, even for themselves. But it doesn't stop them from having them. The next one, discreet. Virgos are very discreet, very low key. They don't, very private in all facets of their life. They like their own privacy. When you get into a Virgo circle, it means something. They don't. I mean, once you get in their circle, they're more open. They're not completely private, but they're not one for public displays of emotion or public displays of affection, that type of thing. They like to keep things very low key. The next thing, Virgos are very forgiving. A lot of that ties into the fact that Virgos, they do things, like I said, very methodically. There's a process, and when you get into that circle that we just talked about, that inner circle that a Virgo has, they will forgive you, if you do something, but they're generally not going to forgive you twice, unless you mean something to them. Like, unless you mean a lot to them, but they will forgive. That's not, that goes into their loyalty. Virgos are loyal as shit. But we're going to get more into that as we move on. Again, this leading in, the next one is take their time to assess the situation. Virgos, even when meeting someone new, a new romantic relationship, they won't rush. They want to know what's going on. They want to know who you are. They want to get to know you. They want to take their time. And that's why, like I said, we're going back to the friend circle. When you're in there, you've earned your way in there. And it's really hard to get out of there. But you could, if you screw it up, you can get out of there. But that's all facets. That's not just with relationships. They take their time. They assess the situation. That's why Virgos, they'll study things. They'll learn things. If they don't know, they want to know. Very, very curious. But like I said, you won't usually catch a Virgo rushing into love. Usually, even if they are feeling that way, they'll still take their time. They want to know. They're not ones to jump in blindly. The next one, loyal to a fault. And what I mean by that is once once they took the time, once they, got you in that circle, they can be loyal past the point of where you deserve it. And sometimes they give their loyalty to people that don't necessarily deserve it. But with Virgos, they're very consistent. Like, they're consistently loyal. They're consistently doing things for people. They're not one for the grand gesture once in a blue moon, this big grand gesture. They're more about doing it every day. It's consistency. They show up. If you're looking for a friend to show up, if you're looking for a partner that's going to show up for you, Virgos, in my opinion, are one of the best. Next thing, Virgos have a tendency of, like, people that know Virgos will know this, but people that don't really, on the outside looking in, Virgos don't seem like funny people, but they actually really are. They just have a really offbeat sense of humor. Very subtle, very witty. If a Virgo's teasing you, if they tease you a lot, they like you. But like I said, for some people, it's hard to catch it because it is subtle. But great sense of humor, and that's one thing I feel like my buddy that I talked about that came over to clean my house, and my dad, same thing. Even my stepmother. A lot of people don't get your sense of humor until they get to know you. Like my dad, people always thought he was just being kind of a dink when he said things, but it was always, he meant it as a joke, but he just had this really serious face when he said it. So it was almost like people just didn't get it till you understood him. And then when you understood him, like, it took me forever to understand my dad's humor. But once I did, I realized he was actually being funny quite a bit. The next thing, health conscious. Virgos are very, in most cases, they eat healthy. They exercise. I wouldn't be surprised going into the gym, stuff like that, taking care of themselves. They really like to take care of themselves. I actually had a personal trainer a few years ago. He was a Virgo. And, one of the things with that is, again, with the studying, a lot of times is when Virgos, because they're health conscious, they look into things like that. They're always aware of stuff like that. So they start and they learn about it. So they're very knowledgeable about it. Like, even people that aren't, like, if you meet a Virgo that goes to the gym, that's a good person to ask for advice about things about the gym, because they, like I said, they take time to assess things. Just like every facet of their life, they want to know. And they're not much for wasting time. So if they're going to do something, and they're going to do it right. So when you see someone, like that, you're going to get some really good advice, because not only are they doing it for themselves, not only do they are consistent in it, but generally they take, a peak knowledge of it and actually learn about it and why you're doing these things and how to do things better. So leading into number 12, very modest. They're a bit shy. Some people say they come off as shy. They're not really, when they do something, they don't really need a whole lot. They don't want attention for it. Not only do they not need it, but they don't want it. They don't boast. Like I said with my personal trainer that I had, I was working with him for probably almost 2 months before we happened to be in the dressing room. We changed together, and the guy always wore baggy t-shirts, and I remember he took his shirt off and he was just ripped, and I'm just thinking, like, you got all these people walking around with those tank tops on and always showing their muscles off and always staring in the mirror, but you could tell he was in shape because just a workout he did and stuff like that, but he just never really, he didn't show it off. That wasn't what he was doing it for. His intentions for doing what he did, and, that was to help people, which is where we're leading into the next one is, the next thing is helpful. They like to take on projects, and just being fair, I call them the fixer, because with Virgos, they see things that maybe other people don't. Well, not maybe, they see things other people don't. My dad used to flip houses, and he always made good money on every flip, because he really saw the value in things. He saw it deep through it. It wasn't just about, okay, like we go look at houses, and I remember always looking at houses, and he'd look at tons of houses before he made a decision. And there were some houses I had no idea why he bought them, but he'd always flip it and always make good money. He always made a good profit. And it's like that with people. Virgos see things that other people may have missed or overlooked. And Virgos, if you give them the chance, they will try to fix you. And in a very genuine way. They're very helpful, but they can be blunt and they can be harsh. So if you ask for help from a Virgo, just remember you're opening the door for that. They're not gonna sugarcoat you. That's probably another reason why my buddy was a good personal trainer, because he was pretty harsh with me. Like, he didn't bullshit with me at all. And that's the thing. They're very helpful, and they have no expectations, except for if you want their help, and if they're doing it at a good place. They want you, if you want to do something and you want their help, they're not going to put on kid gloves when they talk to you. They're going to give it to you straight, and they're going to push you, but you're going to get the most, you're going to get the best results as long as you're willing to open yourself up to that. The next thing, generous. Virgos are very generous. They're givers. Like I said, they will, if you ask for help, they'll drop shit and come help you. Whether it be moving, whether it be advice, they will give you the time. They're generous with their time, and they're also generous with, with giving monetarily. A lot of Virgos are very good with that, but mostly generous with their time. As long as they're helping, they'll continue to help. Like I said, it's, they'll give their shirt off their back if it helps you. And like, one of the things about Virgos, like I already mentioned, is that they're not doing it for anything they're going to receive. Some signs like Leos, they'll do anything for you, but they expect that appreciation. Virgos aren't like that. They'll give and give. And, seeing you succeed will really make a Virgo happy, and knowing that they helped, knowing they can help you is like payment for them, which is Why I really love Virgos. It's one of the things I love the most about them is just, their satisfaction is your success. The next one, take their time. Virgos take their time, and we go back to, like I said earlier, when I talked about Virgos in dating. They're not going to rush in, because Virgos, they want things to go as planned, and rushing never make anything go to plan. But also, when we talk about them taking their time in a relationship, they want to get to know you. They want you to know them. They're not as promiscuous as some other signs may be. They're not going to be the ones that rush. Even if they like you, they're going to take their time. It's like if you go to a nice fancy restaurant, you're sitting down to eat and the food looks great, and you just take your time, and you're to everything. You're just enjoying it. It's an experience. And like I said, I mean, they take their time and they don't rush. They enjoy it. They enjoy it all. And going back to like the discreet and private part, and the part where I'm talking about that inner circle, they want to make that the best inner circle there ever was. So they're not going to rush to bring someone else new in. But if they're giving you their time, you're on the right track. The next one is doubt keeps Virgos up all night. Virgos tend to have a lot of anxiety because they do think the shit at everything. They're always thinking, they're always planning. When things don't go to plan, when they think things aren't going to go to plan, like I said, doubt keeps them up all night. They're they think a lot. They think very deeply. There's a lot of deep thoughts when we're talking about Virgos. And like I said, they're very loyal. So if anything's happening to anybody in their circle, they're thinking about it. They have high standards, so they're thinking about that. The need freak. One of the things my stepmother, this isn't doubt, but I remember going into the kitchen late at night, getting a drink, put my glass beside the sink, and go to my room to go to bed. And I hear her get up, and I hear the water. She'd go out, knowing there was a glass there, bugged the shit out of her. So that's not really this, but I just wanted to get that in there because I remember it used to make me laugh. Because shit like that would bug her. Also, we were at my brother's house one time. My brother's kind of a messy guy. And I remember she had to leave because it bugged her so much. She said, I'm OCD. This shit is killing me. His place is dirty, and I want to clean it, but I don't want to be rude, so I had to leave. She was full on panic attack. And she sat that whole night bugging my dad to call him and ask if she could clean his house. She said, knowing that place exists in my mind is driving me crazy. I didn't know it existed until I did. And when I did know it existed, now all I can think about is. But that's not really what that was about. But I feel like we'll throw that in there too. Because, it is, it is part of the thinking a lot. But doubt, like I said, they don't like to get things wrong. So, it is something that will bug them. And a lot of times they won't tell you about it. The next thing is a little bit more fun. I try to do a little bit of the sexual nature, just to throw it in. Mostly for the people that want to be with a Virgo or are with a Virgo and want to spice it up a little bit or have, more of a relationship that way, more intimacy. Virgos are very sensual. Like I said, not very promiscuous outside of a relationship. You're not going to see a Virgo that sleeps around a lot. They like committed relationships. They like working for something, working together on something, building something. you know. But when you get into that place, when you get into the intimacy with a Virgo, it's very sensual, um, touching, feeling, you know, um, studying each other with your hands, studying each other with your eyes, like just really, again, more studying, but they like it, you know, and they want to be touched all over. They want to touch you over. They're people pleasers, you know, they're partner pleasers. Sorry, not people pleasers. But yeah, it's more of a, like I said, you're not going to catch many Virgos being um, all over the place sexually. You know, they like to have a partner and they like to, you know, get to know that partner and spend more time on that person. Um, the next thing, Virgos, a lot of people think that Virgos are controlling. Now, they are, but not in a negative way. Uh, they want everything, like I said, they're perfectionists. They want everything to go to plan. So they want control because they, you know, because they have it in them that they know how this can work and how it will work and how it should work. So they kind of want to take over control. It's kind of like a passive aggressive thing. Um, but they're very particular. They're very analytical. And again, like I said, perfectionist. You know, it's kind of like the way I think of it is like sometimes when I help my kids do their work. Or better example, the other day I was helping my son teaching him how to do laundry. And he's 12. So his attention span is not that great. So I would show him how to do it, and then I'd ask him to do it. And, you know, he just wasn't paying attention, so I was like, okay, fine, I'm just going to do it. And even if he does do it, like when he finally did get it and he finally did it, I still won't let him do it by himself. It's because I want it done right, and I know that I can do it. But like I said, I'm not a Virgo, but that's basically what I mean by that. Like, they know how they want it done, and they know they can do it right the way they want it. So it's all in perspective. Now, next one, don't mess with a Virgo. Virgos, they're always ahead of you. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be ahead of you. You know, they're always 10 steps ahead. And messing with a Virgo is, I don't advise it. Like I said, I feel like Virgos know more. When we go back to the forgiving part, they're very forgiving, but they don't forget. You know, and if you're going to try to bullshit a Virgo, like I said, they notice everything. So sometimes Virgos know things and they don't tell you that they know those things, you know? So, like I said, if you're going to mess with a Virgo, be prepared for that. Which leads into the next one and the next one, but we'll go to the next one. Intelligent. They're very intelligent. You know, it's because they always study. It's because they always have this thirst for knowledge. It's because they're always wanting to be the best. It's because they have the high standards, you know. But they're very intelligent. You know, they're more aware than we think they are. Like I said, that wallflower type idea is like they know more things going on than we think they know. But also intelligent in the fact that they strive to be the best. And you can't be the best if you don't work at it. And Virgos, more than anybody else that I know, they work their ass off. Now, the last one I have for this, it kind of leads the last two into it, but it's a revenge. Reason why you don't really want to piss a Virgo off is because they would make the best villain. No offense, Virgos. But for Virgos, revenge is I think a Virgo made that saying up. I don't know. but I bet you that they did. That revenge is a dish best served cold. Because you can screw them over and they go real quiet, and then you're in trouble. I read this quote when I was actually researching and doing stuff with this. It was, "My silence is not forgiveness. It's preparation for a takedown. So clean, you will swear karma helped me." I was actually watching this video, and this guy had cheated on his girlfriend, and she found out, but she didn't tell him because his birthday was coming up. Well, that's not why she didn't tell him. But anyway, at the birthday party, she played the video of him cheating on her with all his friends there. And it was funny because she held out for, I don't know how long it was a little while, but she said, "I held on to it because I was waiting, I was plotting, I wanted to be the best revenge. I really wanted to get back at him." And that's such a Virgo thing. So don't screw a Virgo over. They're intelligent. I mean, think of it this way. They're intelligent. They're great at planning. And they're perfectionist. That sounds like the worst combination of that seems like the best combination of a person you don't want to piss off. Like, let's screw over someone that's highly intelligent, loves to plan shit, and notices everything. And like I said, when you're gonna piss off a Virgo, be prepared for that. They build up that anger, and that anger comes out in a very intelligent way. Like, some signs will be, they find you cheated on them, they'll run to your work. The moment they find out, they're running to you, and they're gonna let you know, and they're gonna give it to you. Virgo, no. Let's go back to the drawing board for a minute. Let's figure this out. How can I get back at them? It's like going to drain your account the day before rent's due. I'd be like, well, maybe you should have been better with your money. It's the long game, and it's, like I said, I don't know who came up with that saying, but I feel like it had to have been a Virgo. If not, they know one. Yeah. Now, I always do this at the end. I say, if you are romantically involved or, friendship, and somehow you lost your Virgo, little tips on how to get them back. Not always going to work. Depends how bad you screwed up. But because you were in their inner circle, because they're loyal, you have a chance. Your best chance is to apologize. Respect their intelligence. Acknowledge your mistakes. And show that you're committed to change. And it's not always going to work. It's not a foolproof plan. But if you've gotten into the inner circle with a Virgo, there's a chance for you. But like I said, you have to apologize. You have to respect their intelligence. Like, if they caught you doing one thing and they break it off with you or whatever, you're coming back for an apology, be real. Tell them everything, because they probably know more than you think they do. So don't just apologize for the things you think they know. Be real. Like I said, acknowledge your mistakes. They will forgive you if they believe you. And if it's not an ongoing thing, and it depends on what it is too as well. Like I said, this isn't a foolproof plan. This is just a little bit of help in case that happens. I hope this all... I really like doing these videos. And like I said, this is just touching the iceberg. There's so much more to them. I just wanted to do kind of a quick video. And it's just me getting my feet wet in this as well. Talking about things. I just try to share what I know, and hopefully it helps somebody. You know, because sometimes the biggest conflict in a relationship is just misunderstandings, not really knowing, you know, the other person. And if we know them better, we can accommodate, we can work around it, we can work with it, we can, you know, work into it. But that's what I have for you. Be good. Take care. Stay safe.